This week on London Real, mobility expert and CrossFitter, Kelly Starrett.
You should be thinking about how you think. You should be thinking about how you sleep and how you eat and how you move. What we've found always is that if you give people the right information, they make better decisions, which is the heart and soul of what this show is.
Imagine you have the most extraordinary set of software, the brain, on top of the most extraordinary set of hardware.
Everyone that I'm around that I really respect, they bust their ass really hard. Like, if you think you're gonna be good at it, go do it.
Say, aha, that's an aha moment. There's a chance for us to get better and address the things we're weak at.
Let your goal be to lead a simple life. And I was like, fuck that. Like, that's a bullshit. I don't want a simple life. Bring on the... And now I understand exactly what he meant.
London Real presents Kelly Starrett, Supple Leopard.
You have no idea what you're capable of. And we're living in a time where it's all possible.
For London Real pre-rolls, I usually like to take you guys somewhere on the streets of London. But today, we're going underground, as in the Tube. And I'm about to go 100 steps down to the Old Street Station and take you guys along for the ride. The Tube is London's underground network. It's the oldest of any city in the world. I think the first one ran in 1890. And it's my preferred way of getting around this city. I go crazy in traffic, and just waiting in a taxi can really do my head in. So I love going on the Tube. It also forces you to look other human beings in the eye and to kind of be part of a community in a train, and I like that. I grew up in a Southern California car culture where you're constantly isolated in this little bubble from looking at people and smelling people, and so I highly recommend the Tube, as I did to Mr. Kelly Starrett, who is our guest this week. Kelly is a CrossFitter and a mobility expert. He looks at human performance, athletic performance, and analyzes the way we move, the way we sit, the way we do so many actions, and tries to figure out if there's a better way to do it. And he has found a lot of much better ways, even from the way he sits. And you should look at his posture during this show, because it had myself and Timothy Sheaf almost mimicking him at one point, because he's just sitting up so erect. And you can see how it is the best way to keep your spine in that position. So it was great having Kelly here. He's a really intelligent guy. He's really well read, loves his science fiction. He quotes the samurai swordsman Musashi, and he's just a lot of fun to be around as well. And in addition to being very knowledgeable and serious about his craft. So I think you'll enjoy Kelly. We also had Mr. Timothy Sheaf on, who is the British free runner, and love Tim's energy, man. He always brings out the best in people when they're here. So hope you enjoy that. We are now in this underground Tube network here in London, and you're gonna see some like cavernous tunnels coming up soon. I hope they don't see me filming in here, because I think it's technically illegal for like terrorism reasons. So there you go. We are sponsored by the folks at XBrain, and they are the makers of Way Better protein powder. I'm a big fan. I've been talking about it for the last few weeks. It's grass-fed, made from free-range, hormone-free cows. And you can pick that up along with the Xanarex fat burner and a bunch of other the XBrain products online now. If you use the code LondonReal, you get 15% off. And another thing I'm going to do this month is if you tweet me your pictures of the XBrain products that you have bought and pictures of yourself, I'm going to retweet those out, and then I'm going to pick one of you at the end of the month who can come down to London Real Studios. I'll give you a tour of what we do, and then I'll take you out to dinner as well. So hopefully that interests you. You can ask me anything from details of how we do the podcast to what Jacques Fresco's really like. So I hope you guys do that and support the guys at XBrain, because they support us and keep this podcast moving. In the studio this week, we had a gentleman by the name of Beardy Man in the studio, and he is a former beatboxer. He actually won the British beatboxing contest in 2006 and 2007. He's recently given a TED Talk, and he took his beatboxing and morphed it into like a human performance where he only uses the sounds from his mouth. He loops it together in technology, and his show is part improv, part comedy, part mashup, and really fascinating to have him on the show. So he'll be coming up soon. I had Tim Sheaf in the house as well, and it's all good all around. More tubes coming through here. And finally, we are sponsored by the guys at Bulletproof Coffee. I love this stuff. It's coffee that's free of molds and toxins. It's, there's the tube. You blend it together with grass-fed butter, brain octane oil, which is like the best of the coconut oil. And I mix that up in the morning, and it's basically my breakfast. I don't eat until the afternoon. I'm lean, I feel great. It really gets my brain working well. So check that out. If you're in Europe or UK, you can get that easily at XBrain, or go to the States. They've got a brand new website, upgradedself.com. They've lowered some shipping rates and just made it easier to buy, especially if you want to set up an order. So go check those guys out. Again, support the guys that keep this show free and happening regularly, the guys at Bulletproof. And there you go. More exciting stuff coming up. I'm always looking for guest suggestions. If you guys have any ideas, you can say goodbye to the tube there. And if you want to help out, best thing to do is to tweet or share our episodes. And if you want to intern us, send me a message. It's brian@londonreal.tv. And yeah, it's fantastic having your support. Appreciate all the positive vibes. I'm getting so many tweets these days of like old episodes people are watching, whether it's Fresco or Dorian Yates, and it's always good having that energy. So thank you so much for that. And now I give you the one and only Mr. Kelly Starrett.
This is London Real. I am Brian Rose. We are sponsored today by the folks at XBrain. They are the makers of Way Better protein powder. It's from organic, free-range, grass-fed, happy cows. It's sweetened with stevia. You can check that out at xbrain.co.uk. You get 15% off by using the code LondonReal. We are also sponsored by Dave Asprey, the Bulletproof exec himself. We're all drinking Bulletproof coffee. I gave Kelly a little taste of home. You know, he's a long way from home, and it's nice to have a bit of Bulletproof. Timothy Sheaf has had his first Bulletproof as well.
Yeah.
How's that feeling?
Yeah, it's good.
Yeah?
Kicking.
All right, that's cool. If you want to check it out, it's a coffee it's low in molds and toxins. Then you put in some grass-fed butter, some brain octane oil, which is like the best of the coconut oil. You mix it up. I drink it every day. It's fucking delicious. It like replaces my meal in the morning. I could go on and on and on about it. I'm actually 60 years old, but I look like this. No. Because of Bulletproof. But anyways, if you want to get that in UK and Europe, you can go to XBrain. Otherwise, go to upgradedself.com and check out Asprey and the boys there. And let's get on with this show. My co-host today is free runner Timothy Sheaf, who hosts The Flow Show on YouTube. You would have seen Timothy on MTV. You've got videos with stuntman Damian Walters. You're on rugby commercials for O2. You got your Life in a Handstand videos where he lives life in a handstand. You got to check them out. Love in a Handstand. You're cooking with Jamie Oliver. What's up, man? How do you have time to do anything else?
Yeah, I know. I'm just living life, man. Following my intrigue.
Yeah.
And I have such a pure appreciation for certain people in the world, and somehow the world brings me towards them. You know, you follow the destiny. Whatever.
Well, it brought you here, so.
It's brought me here, man, and I'm just loving it. And we get guests like this who, I'm always like, I need to meet, not need to, but want to meet certain people. Like, for my training, I've been looking down this route of Paul Chek and people like that, and I was in New York 2 months ago, and someone had the book Supple Leopard, and said, this has really helped my life. This is a guy that owns a free running gym, 5-star in New York, and he was on his side reading it. And he was like, this is a really good book, Tim. I haven't actually read it, I apologize.
I texted Tim a couple days ago and I was like, yeah, Kelly Starrett, Supple Leopard. He's like, I know that book. So.
Yeah.
Cool, thanks for being here, dude. Our guest today is Mr. Kelly Starrett, who is a coach, physical therapist, author, and speaker who has revolutionized how athletes think about human movement and performance. You're the author of the book Supple Leopard, we just spoke about. You read science fiction. You quote Musashi, the Japanese swordsman. You do all sorts of crazy shit. Kelly, welcome to London and welcome to London Real.
Thank you. I'm not leaving.
Really? the show or the city?
Yes, I'm bringing the family over. Best food. I mean, the food has been great. It's interesting that you mentioned finding people. You know, Vonnegut has a concept called the caress.
Okay.
And he thinks it's a group of people that God gets together to get work done for him.
Yeah.
And you just you can't explain it. Like, why is this person in my life? I don't know. You've just found your caress, man.
Yeah, I think so. I've never heard that before, but that's spot on. I've heard that in like Celestine Prophecy and all these different books. They mention that type of, you have a group of people that you're supposed to be around. You might have been together in past lives, whatever, and then.
With Dave Asprey, for example, it's, you know, he was put on this planet to give me this coffee with butter. That's like pretty sure.
Yeah. No, it's weird how you say that. Like, we just always been doing London Real. We have people on we love, and we just throw out all these positive vibes out there. And then I get to meet people like Timothy, get to meet people like Dave, like you. And so, yeah, there's something weird about that. Caress.
That's
Caress.
right. Well, when you see waves come together, they multiply, right? It's like a geometric.
Okay.
You know, it's true. I mean, amazing people. We're living in an incredible time.
You know, it's interesting. You're really well read, and you like dropping science fiction references into a lot of your teaching, and it makes you a little different than, I guess, what a lot of people expect to be the two-dimensional, I hate to say it, like fitness guy. You're not that guy. You're thinking about a lot of different concepts in your head. You almost seem like a left brain, right brain conflict. You seem very creative, but very scientific at the
He's my
same
type
time.
of guy. That's amazing.
Thanks. You should see me dance too. Shake.
Dun, dun, dun.
You know, I think what's amazing is that people have solved so many of the problems that we're trying to solve in our own fields. Recently, there was a TED Talk, and someone was talking about how at the highest levels of innovation now for some of these big companies, the chief scientist is actually the biggest liability, because they're so compartmentalized and so specialized that they can't think, and collaborate across platforms. It's called siloed information.
Okay.
Well, if you see guys like Dave, you've had on your show, and sponsors, and Tim Ferriss, what's happened is that these guys have really done a good job of starting to be super connectors and connect silos of really, really powerful information. And even if, I was on Rogan not so long ago, and Joe has done an amazing job of really kind of curating and bringing extraordinary people and thinking, some strange space sex ideas, I get it, but also maybe this is how we should eat, and this is how we should think. And look at how you're living your life and bring consciousness. And he's done it to a group of people like NASCAR level. I mean, just really made it proletariat, made it accessible. And I think what's happening now is if you're not, reading widely, if you're not paying attention, then what you miss the opportunity that people have already solved your problem. You're just not thinking kind of collaboratively or thinking about, like, for example, we just had the, there's some race about sailing or something that we just won.
America's Cup?
Yeah, go USA. So, but one of the things is that boats only could go about 50 miles an hour, right? It's the top speed because of the cavitation of the wings. Even if they're in these hydrofoils, they only go about 50, which is amazing, right? But the flow around the wing starts to become disconnected. And that's actually one of the same phenomenons that we see at speed errors with athletes when they start to go too fast, or they kind of lose disconnection. We start to see cavitation. It's so interesting that you can take some of these sailing concept metaphors and see that how are people solving these problems, and maybe that's
speed
not,
wobbles in skateboarding.
Same
when you cruise, if you've not got the right wheels and everything on you.
And so you really, to your point though, I think if you're not paying attention to all of these aspects, and what we're asking people to do for the first time in a long time is be a complete human. You should be thinking about how you think. You should be thinking about how you sleep and how you eat and how you move and what you read. And it's easy to do now. It's not, you don't have to be this esoteric, gatekeeper friend. Like, you just have to listen to a few podcasts and be curious. And the TED Radio Hour, good Lord,
Yeah, Joe started it off pretty much with thinking, like, why are we doing the things we're doing? And this show was completely inspired by Joe. After I watched him for 6 months, we pretty much started the show. And it's like, why do we do what we do? Consciousness-wise, nutrition-wise, training-wise.
Yeah.
Like, let's just look at why we're doing these things.
And it's great. I mean, Joe, is hammering out these podcasts and these productions, but
sick, man.
You're in Europe, right? And there are these extraordinary people all around us that people don't know about, and it's, the power of networking, for example. It's not you and I are best friends. That's actually a weak connection, even though we're best friends. But it's the fact that 15 or 20 really interesting people, then I know 15 or 20, and then those people find each other because of us, and then some collaboration goes through the roof. And now we can move the conversation forward. I think there's a street song about that.
Yes.
Interesting. I hadn't really thought of it that way. What's your first call? I mean, you come from San Francisco, you have your own CrossFit place there, and you fly over here to London. Like, what's the first things you notice? I mean, this isn't exactly the pinnacle of fitness in London. The food, the people, when you see them, what do you notice, good and bad, compared to, say, America?
Interesting. One is that probably everyone in this country could use some vitamin D.
Okay.
Probably need to take a little bit more vitamin D.
We just shift the whole country down a bit closer to the
Sorry,
equator.
vitamin D.
Vitamin D. Is that sun or just the D?
The D. You need the
Okay.
D. So sun would be nice, but I think that's not possible.
Okay.
It's interesting to see how food has become much higher quality across. I mean, I live in San Francisco in the Bay Area. I mean, you can get a, wait for it, raw grass-fed milk latte at my farmer's market. Like, well, let me just steam up that raw milk for you. And you're like, oh, it's crazy.
Yeah.
So that's my life, right? And we have this sort of fake little curated world. But coming over here and actually seeing the food quality, I've seen a ton of people running. I think we are in a kind of a cultural shift, even across country platforms, where people are much more interested in their fitness or even their health and well-being. And I think you're starting to see that. I mean, any urban population, urban center is interesting because it's an urban center, and I don't think it necessarily reflects, but I think Europe as a whole is lagging greatly behind, what's happening sometimes in some of these other places in terms of fitness, in terms of...
Definitely. Oh, it really is compared to America. And
Right. But we're not the same obesity levels, so it's kind of a weird kind of...
our bad food isn't as bad as their bad food.
We don't have as much
You've
of
got the
our bad
extreme
food.
in America. Your good food is so much better than the options we have here, and your bad food is so much worse than what we have here. So the spectrum in America of fit and unfit, it pushes these pendulums.
Michael Pollan's last book just came out. It actually came out on the same day of my book, so I watched it obsessively. I watched my book kill his books. But whatever, that's neither here nor there. But his book was called Cooked, and it turns out one of the phenomenon that he saw was that one of the big barriers to obesity was actually cooking food. And I think there's what I've seen is that there's fast places, but the fast places are still cooking real food. Yeah. And so, I mean, it may be like I had an amazing sausage roll yesterday, but someone cooked that.
I believe you admitted that.
So are you kidding me? I'm proud of that.
Okay,
Like, how my coat, my coat is so shiny today. But someone still cooked that food. Yeah. And then also, everyone walks here. Everyone is walking, which is pretty amazing. Everyone walks. I mean,
so you're saying the cooked food made it healthier?
I think it makes it slightly healthier.
Just because they had to cook it on scene, so it had to come in one shape, one the other shape. It wasn't processed and made.
You mean they do that more out here?
Yeah, I think you're seeing actually people are using ingredients, even if it's wheat and heavy fat, and I think there on a whole there is, and then there's a base activity level. One of the things that we're looking at right now, especially in this next project I'm working on, is we look at this sort of sedentary nature of people. And what we're finding out even is the research says that if you train hard like a maniac, like you're an Olympian, training that level, and you go sit at a desk, it's the equivalent of having a sedentary lifestyle. It actually is like smoking and jogging. Like it's anathema. It doesn't make sense. And what we're seeing is that people are living sedentary lifestyles, even though they're engaged in significant training and real training, but they're sedentary, so it doesn't matter. Because for the other, and I think what you're seeing
what do you mean by that?
Well, the base sort of activity level. So walking isn't exercise, it's locomotion. So we're clear, right? That's not exercise, that's moving from place to place. Yeah. A great study came out when the Wii first came out, remember? The Wii, and they had the Wii Fit board. Yeah. What turns out, there was this revolutionary study where playing the Wii burned as many calories as standing. So if you stood and played a game, burned the same calories as standing. and I think what you're seeing is culturally here, because we don't have the obesity, just because people are active, even if it's just walking to the store, walking to the tube, you just see a culture built around movement. Whether that doesn't mean you're fit, it just means that you're not fat. Right.
Yeah, there's definitely something to learn from the Europeans too. I mean, like they have that book, like why Parisian women aren't fat, like all these things. I mean, they do something right, and like portion size is something I really notice. Even in England and in Europe, you go and you have a small starter, and then the meal, and then boom, and you go to Texas, and like the plate is as big, and you are judged by the size of your food in some places in America. Like, how big was your steak?
Dude, don't go there.
Yeah, okay. Am I judging you?
I gain weight every time I'm in America.
Yeah.
It's not the size, mate. Right.
So like, I think there's a lot, we don't understand enough about training or train enough here, but there's something with calorie consumption, or you said at base activity level, that we're doing right over here. So I don't know, maybe it's some kind of marriage of those two.
Well, one of the, Nike's doing a great job, and Jawbone getting a good job just tracking activity and just making people aware with their little bracelets, right?
Yeah.
The fuel bracelet. And people have said for a long time you should probably try to take like 10,000 steps a day. And that's just base human movement function. Take 10,000 steps a day. And that's really, like, if you're in London, you're probably taking 20,000 steps a day. And that's just getting people up off the couch and off the chair. And if you actually look and track what happens to an average busy person, They get up in the morning, they walk around, they sit in the car, they sit at the breakfast table, they go to your job, you sit around, maybe you sprint to the gym, try to exercise a little bit, and that's a whole different, are you even exercising, or are you wasting your time? And then, then you go back and you sit, and then you're back at home, and you actually haven't done anything. You haven't even moved your joints through full range of motion. Your hip may be stuck at 90 degrees. You may haven't actually flexed your leg the whole way for weeks. And so I think what's happening is, if you just culturally, there is more activity, getting people conscious of that activity, and then just lowering that barrier of entry. Just putting it in so it's background noise. Like, you guys don't think about necessarily being fit or going walking. It's just the way of life. And so, I think shopping and walking, culturally it just fits in. I think we have some big problems given just we're a car culture, and it's not because people aren't conscious or want to make better decisions. It's just kind of there are barriers against them sometimes. What we've found always is that if you give people the right information, they make better decisions, which is the heart and soul of what this show is, what Joe's doing, what Tim's doing, is saying, let's trust people to make better decisions for their lives.
For people that don't know you, can you break down what Supple Leopard was all about and kind of your whole thinking behind it and how it was received?
We started, I am a classic trained physio. I have a doctorate in physio. And then I also am a strength and conditioning coach and have a gym in our 9th year of business. So I had a big history of trying to be a professional athlete as a kid, right? And I have been obsessed with human performance as long as I can remember. I mean, I just, you fall into it and you're obsessed. And what I noticed in my physio practice and in strength and conditioning practice was that there were big holes in people's understanding of how they worked. There were kind of people couldn't even perform basic maintenance on themselves. And some of the information kind of guarded by physios and chiros and osteos, it's like a Ponzi scheme. Like, you get injured, but I don't really give you enough to really fix yourself. Like, you get knee pain, I'm like, I'm gonna go see my physician. I'm like, your physician? Really? He's gonna see your physician? Your physician is for like when you're really, really sick or really, really injured. And you should have been able to take a crack at that using the technique that your grandma showed you. Here's how we cured knee pain back in Nam. This is what we did. So, what we realized was this big hole that athletes didn't have the basic, kind of conceptual understanding of how they worked. They just worked until they broke. At the same time, one of the things that was happening was that we estimate we've done between about 90 to 100,000 athlete sessions at our gym since we've been open, which is a pattern recognition, the likes of which not even God has seen, right? Worm sign. So, but we had seen so many athletes moving, performing, squatting, pressing, that we started to develop a kind of a very formal language. The strength and conditioning community and in CrossFit has said, hey, look, you need to be responsible for all of these shapes and positions that the body does, right? Like, for example, I figured out that like the shoulder really has sort of basic 4 shapes that it does. 4 things. One is going overhead, right? That's throwing your daughter in the air, swimming, overhead position, putting something up on the shelf, right? Doing a handstand. And that's core competency. Like, you're very competent upside down, but it just turns out you're very, very competent in this one archetypal shape that the human should be in. Pressing, like the bottom of a push-up, is one of the shapes. Bench pressing. The way we would hang and grab something to snatch it overhead, or in this position, or the finish position for the swimming stroke, is sort of one of these archetypal shapes. And then how you would carry something around, how you would choke someone out in Kimura, or in a choke, naked choke, or how you'd carry a sack of flour around, or a front rack and a barbell. So what we've said is, hey, look, we figured out that all of the exercise that we do basically challenge these 4 shoulder shapes, and you have to be competent in them under load, breathing hard, fast, right, under metabolic demand and stress. And that's actually what athletics are. Okay, show me that you're competent in how your body functions across as many different kind of domains and capacities as we can think of. So we start to put this language, we're starting to see these patterns. We don't understand this when we start. We just know that you should press and you should be able to run like a demon and jump and land. Like, these are the skills that make us human, right? Ido Portal, great guy, he's like, why can't you do a handstand yet? Like, what's wrong with you? I mean, like, you're a broken human, you can't do a handstand. You don't know how to roll backwards? Like, are you kidding me? Right? Basic skills about being the language of how your spine works. I should be able to keep my spine straight when I lift something. I should be able to flex it into a forward somersault like a child.
Your spine is very straight right now.
Well, I'm sitting, right?
Yeah, right.
He's inspired me. I'm
gonna start doing this. All right.
It's okay. Practice makes perfect. It's fine. I mean, if you want to be bent over, broken guy, sneeze when you're 70 and herniate. I mean, go for it. Or you can be tall and awesome.
I need to be taller.
What we've seen though is we started seeing these patterns. So physio meets strength conditioning, and there are very few strength conditioning coach physios in the world. And what I was finding was that the same conversations I was having about performance, jumping higher, generating more torque, being in stronger positions, were the things that were causing, the lack of that was causing all these injuries in people. Plus, hey, bad hydration, bad nutrition, bad sleep, bad lifestyle. And what ended up happening was it sort of kind of came into this cogent idea of a system of understanding how people moved. That, and we were just talking earlier that, you know, the yogis took a serious crack at this. I mean, you know, mind, you know, I quote this all the time, Dan Coyle's book, it'll come to me in just a second, but the Talent Code really looks at skill acquisition as a complex biological process, for example. And what's happening is, you know, as you move in a certain pattern, your brain recognizes those neurons fire together and they end up wiring together. This is why habits are really hard to break, because they become actually myelinated. There's like a plastic sheath that's been put around that, and those Schwann cells, those oligodendrocytes in your brain that basically create that insulation and reinforce that pattern. That's why it takes 10,000 repetitions. For a child to learn something functional, they actually perform 6,000 to 10,000 times. That's how long it takes for a kid to like walk and figure out 6,000 to 10,000 errors, right? It takes a long time.
I hear that with 10,000 people talk about 10,000 jumps with parkour.
So it's interesting. And so this is what's so cool about what's happening now, is that we're starting to see that, well, hey, the reason we have a brain in the first place, a nervous system, is to move us through the environment. There's no other reason to have a brain, right? So you can interact, you can reproduce. And it turns out cognition came around later on and is bootstrapped on top of the movement brain.
Right.
So to somehow separate these things, like kids with learning disabilities do really well when they jump around, right? They function better, they stand better. When you sit, your brain actually turns off. Like, it's a big problem. And you'll see that if you have to take a really, really important call, you'll stand up and walk around and talk.
I do all the time.
And you're like, why am I walking, you know?
Yeah, I can't sit and be on it.
So take this idea of pattern formation that people haven't been given the software to this incredible hardware. Like, we really have failed people. We're like, here's your spine, it should be able to do all these things, and by the way, good luck with that. Right. And if you're a genius mover, I don't know what you did as a kid, dance, gymnastics, ballet, something.
Climb trees and being upside down.
And dance, you were hip hop break dancing.
All right, so there's some things that you had to figure out. This is do a handstand. There's only one position you can put your shoulder in to be strong and do that, because that's the only position you can do it. So what we see is that suddenly, where we are in understanding habit formation, what's the best way to train, where are we giving away force and torque, we're cycling in all the lifestyle and nutrition pieces, right? And then for the first time, we have athletes talking to different kinds of athletes, talking like some of the best yogis in the city train at my gym. And we have parkour athletes, free runners, and then we have gymnasts talking to powerlifters. And that's never happened before. The same way you're curating sort of information and guests and people and best concepts and best practices, well, we've been curating movement practices and athletes and really going and understanding the connections. So suddenly we're like, oh, no wonder armpit forward is the best position for jerking. It turns out that's the only stable position when I block to do a handstand. Right? And of course you knew that. But if you know that, then when I teach you to Olympic lift, you're like, poop, you're automatically a good Olympic lifter. And you already have full range of motion. So, and your tissues are healthy. So now we start talking about longevity, we start talking about duty cycles. You know, if you walk with your feet turned out like a duck, your ankles aren't really ankles anymore. They don't work. It's like one of your wheels on your car turned out sideways. Now you're taking 10,000 steps like that. How many steps does it take before you start to have a wear pattern problem, you know? And if you start to see the duty cycles, 10,000 steps a day, and it's probably 20,000 here, you know, in the UK. Do the math, 140,000 a week. You know, what is that in a month?
Do you think things like Vibram, 5 fingers, would help with that?
Well, I think Vibrams, I'm going to get sued, but Vibrams will help by preventing you from having sex, because they're so ugly.
Jesus.
Let's be clear.
I get Vibram. Well, I just don't wear any shoes.
So you
genuinely
don't
think that they help?
Yeah. Well, so I think that the Vibram was a really...
There you go.
There we go.
Now I want to hear
it was a way of selling stuff to white people. Let's be honest.
So, London Real does not endorse Kelly's views.
So you genuinely think like barefoot walking doesn't help correct those kind of issues?
Barefoot walking is fantastic. Yeah. Your shoes should be flat. Yeah. Why? Because you're born with your heel on the ground. And when we start to systematically shorten your heel cords by elevating
I've had Achilles tendonitis from having high heels on my shoes.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. And then, well, not only that.
The extreme is women's high heels, right?
The extreme, but if you're wearing any running shoe, any sneaker, right, runners, is that what you call them here?
Trainers.
I knew some word.
Yeah.
So any trainer that people are cruising around in typically has a heel.
Yeah.
That heel is the equivalent of a high heel shoe. It doesn't matter, 2 millimeters, 4 millimeters. Yeah. The average drop of like a big Nike shoe can be upwards of a centimeter. And what we've done is now we've taken the center of mass, kicked it forward. Now these kids are walking around in like Chinese foot binding. We've laughed at that, right? Oh, how stupid. They used to bind their feet. What are you doing? You're binding your heel cords.
Yeah.
And so now we've kicked these kids up forward. Their center of mass is off. They shorten heel cords, shorten structures. And then if you go and jump and land and you have these shortened structures, you've just yanked on the tendon on the insertion and it gets hot. So what you figured out is walking around barefoot made your feet really strong. You shouldn't be squishy all the time. I feel like you should be barefoot as much as you can. You're barefoot right now during the interview, as you should be. You can get into the Mercola website and talk about negative ion grounding and all that stuff, right?
Yeah,
sure.
I'm in that stuff.
Sure. Fine, I'm in. But you know what? Benefit. Turns out you should probably be barefoot.
Yeah.
And people aren't barefoot, and your feet should be strong. I went skiing with my family last year, and I went into a ski boot. It was the right ski boot for me, and the guy's like, "Oh, your feet are too wide. You have summer feet." And I was like, "Summer feet? Like, these are what my feet do, bro."
They were just all expanded from the summer?
In it, bro. And right. So, but that's because my feet actually do what feet are supposed to do. My toes spread out, they don't touch. Right? I have strong feet. Yeah. So the issue is the vibram the best expression of that? Probably not, because the toes are jammed up and it actually does have an arch. Okay, but being barefoot or in a barefoot like shoe or in Vivo or any other.
In Vivo is better than
none? Yeah. Well, I think that any shoe that allows you to be on a flat surface and have some contact, you just need enough padding in your shoe so you don't bruise. That's it. But you should be able to feel the ground.
Right. I read a quote from you, and you said the human body is designed for 110 years, but yet most people have pain. Yeah, you were doing a creative live, and you're like, raise your hand if you don't have pain in this room. And like, what did you say? You're like, did you hear me?
That's right.
So, I mean, like, how come everyone's getting pains in their 30s and 40s, and this body's designed?
We've been spending our genetics, right?
Okay.
So, how old are you?
25.
Oh, young and perfect. So the problem is you can get away with it because your tissues are amazing and you're wired very correctly.
My body reacts quickly. Like if I'm doing something wrong, it lets me know quickly.
So everyone's body does, but you're actually shut down.
Yeah.
The pain is a sign that you're biomechanically in a bad position. It's your body's mechanism saying, hey, that's not working. And so now you take a bunch of ibuprofen and try to shut that pain signal off, right? Forget about the healing damage and the liver and all that stuff. Just the fact that you can't hear that message anymore. Your pain is a sign of biomechanical compromise. And we've really tried to insulate ourselves or understand that's the body's way of saying that we're not moving correctly. And it's a big problem. Look, I take people's pain seriously. I'm all about performance, but there are 500,000 spinal surgeries in America every year. And when we start spinning out some of the numbers of injuries and like postural problems, there's a guy who had a website. I'm going to call this guy out on the carpet. It's called like exercisephysiology.com, and he tore Supple Leopard apart. And the reason he did was, he's like, there's no research that supports that bad posture causes pain. And I'm like, are you fucking kidding me, man? Like, you should be crushed. Like, how do you think you herniate those discs? You just bent over and picked up a pillow and that was it? I mean, how heavy was that pillow? Well, the problem is, in your 30s and 40s, some of those hard miles and some of those duty cycles start to show up, and you can't be in those bad positions, and you've worn through the cartilage, or you've started to fray some of the labrum, or you've lost some of the disc height because you're dehydrated, and you know what I mean. And your body is really a miraculous, and we have problems. People have pathology and get injured. I get all that. But most of it, the 98% stuff, we just haven't empowered people to be in better positions, and it's easy. Guess what? The yogis were talking about it. Yeah. Do you think Joseph Pilates was messing around? No, he was into dance and he was into strength, and he understood that you need to train your stomach and trunk every day. You should, And I think we are getting back to that, where people are saying, hey, this isn't working because I'm still having pain. And I just bought another 100-pound pair of shoes, and this insoles aren't working, and this low-fat diet is killing me. And I think we're coming around. And I think what's amazing is now, there's a gluten-free lifestyle magazine.
Right.
What?
That's like your raw milk.
Yeah,
raw
like
milk
what's
coffee.
going on?
So quickly as well.
Yeah, right. I think so. I think what's amazing is that if the body has so much capacity to buffer bad stuff for a long time.
Yeah.
If you just give it a little care and watering, you know that plant you go away and you're just like, I hope it survives, and it comes back and then it's still alive, you know, like a month later, and you just give it a little water and it loves you. That's how your body is. If you just give it a little input.
I completely agree. There's people my age that laugh at me for changing my diet, and they're like, oh, that's cool, that works for you, but I'm going to continue. And they can laugh now, but I know that down the line I'm going to be the one that's winning with that. You know, they're eating the KFCs, but they're the ones that are going to be impotent, or they're going to have those issues. And it's so easy to say when...
drop the impotent bomb, that's huge.
I know, sorry.
Now they'll listen.
No, exactly. That's the point, man. They don't want to lose that. But they can say like, oh yeah, that works for you, but they enjoy their pizza too much and shit. You got to do the work, man. You got to graft, because you don't want to be 35, 40 and having these issues. You can still save it at that point, but it's like, it's easier now to do it now.
And what's cool is, like, if you're around my daughters, I have an 8-year-old, 5-year-old, you know, we just eat food.
Yeah.
And it's not a thing. We don't go on a diet. We just, like, my daughter, my 5-year-old, identified that she's gluten intolerant. Why? Because she was like, yeah, you know, Dad, when I ate the cake at age 4, she's like, I ate the cake at the birthday party, it gave me a stomachache. So she's like, the next birthday party, I only ate the frosting, didn't get stomachache. And she's like, yeah, I think it's the cake. And I'm like, whoa. But if my kids can identify a good food patterning, and it is this back idea of like, do you eat food, yes or no? Like, not food like product, but do you eat actual food?
Produce, not product.
Yeah, and you know, what we're seeing is that we are making these changes. We have to. The problem is it's difficult to see the effects of biochemistry now, but we know, we've run this experiment a lot. We've crushed people. You know, my father's a physician for Kaiser, and right now if you come in with high blood pressure, they'll immediately put you on a statin, because high blood pressure and high cholesterol kind of go together, right? And what they know is that they'll eventually, because the data's been run so long, if you have high blood pressure, your diet and exercise and stress suck, you're eventually gonna have a cholesterol problem. So they'll just start treating you with a statin for your high blood pressure. Right away. Because you know why? That saves more lives. You know, and so there's the medical side of that, right? We're not eating right, we haven't sold it right. Like, hey, by the way, you should wake up with a rock-on heart-on every day. Men listening to this, did you raise your hand? You should, yes or no. And literally, I mean, like, that's because your testosterone is highest in the morning, you should be ready to go. And if you don't, you need to look at your diet, you need to look at your stress, you need to look at your exercise, you need to look, I mean, like, seriously, like, these are simple metrics that, like, every man should know. Can't take a slash in the morning, right? Because you have to wait.
There's a metric. That's a metric.
That's right, and it's yes or no, right? 1 or 0. But now we're talking about performance, and I think performance really captures people's imagination. You eat better, you leaned out, you became a better athlete.
Oh, 100%.
Right? Yeah. You're more lucid, and what we're asking people to do now is actually do more with their lives. Like, there was a lot of time where I think people had a time to think and write, and they had the first sleep, and they'd wake up and work and go back for second sleep because there was no light. Yeah. You've heard all this stuff before, right? These diurnal sleep cycles.
Yeah. And the poets did the best work within those hours as well.
That's right. That's right. So humans are sort of like evolved, but now we're asking people to do so much more work and be so much more engaged that the errors, I think, are even, you know, the tolerances are less. You know, you're going to see that Michael Phelps was eating, like 14,000, 15,000 calories a day, Subway, cookies, and he could buffer that diet because he was in his 20s and he was just swimming. But
and like, the juice maybe. But.
Well, probably not actually.
Yeah? Okay.
He maybe not. But what's interesting is this: when he stops now, he doesn't look very good. If you've seen, like, he looks puffy.
Because he still eats that diet.
And he can't buffer it. And literally, boom, and you start to see pre-diabetics. And a lot of our aged endurance athletes who are just eating this sugar now have, like, the lore of running, the guy who wrote Lore of Running, has flipped his position on carbohydrate. He's like, we damaged so many livers, like this is not the way to be, it's fat, it's, you know. So now we can take these best practices that are sort of Formula One. So I like this analogy, like, you know where disc brakes came from for your car?
Disc brakes, no.
Came from off of race cars. That's why I have them.
Okay.
So we take the racing technology, which is our best athletes, nutrition, performance, our best sort of high functioning people, and how do we spin that best practice down to moms and dads and kids? And that's really what's amazing.
So that was the book. That was the theory of the book.
Ah, right. So the theory of the book is, here's a movement theory process of understanding how your body works. Here's the theory, and then by the way, here's how the theory expresses in the formal language of human movement, which is expressed in strength and conditioning. You know, modern strength and conditioning is really the language of getting up off the ground and putting things over your head or carrying your kids, and we just haven't trained that. So we have to fix the movement pattern first because people don't have a template. So I mean, if you have tight quads over and over knee pain, I can fix your knee pain, fix your knee pain, fix your knee pain. But if your foot's turned out like a duck and your knee doesn't work like a knee and it has a twist, what are we doing? It's the definition of madness. So we've got to tell people how to move and how to get organized, how to be braced right through their spines. This is how you protect your spine. And then here's how to fix it. And no one had ever really taken that approach on before. And the book is, I mean, we made the Wall Street Journal bestseller list. It's a $60 textbook, right? It's 400 pages. It's dense. And what we've seen is it's now in 17 universities because people have the right to have this information. And we've put all this out on our blog for free for years now. We're in our third year on our website because we really feel like if we can empower people, we can see people go faster. And which is why I'm in the UK. Yesterday I worked with the Harlequins, the rugby team.
Right.
And tonight when I leave here, we're going to go work with Arsenal, I think they're a football team around here.
Football, not soccer,
Yeah,
They
right.
call it football.
Footy.
Yeah, that was my next question. Why are you here? Are people kind of seeing your work and they're like, maybe we should start looking at this? Especially those classically trained sports that have passed their training techniques from generation to generation without maybe thinking about why they're doing it.
The door's been cracked. You can't put the lid back on the box. And what's happened is people have, when one of your star athletes, let's make this about money. Star athlete has torn his ACL. What's that cost? The trade for that player for Arsenal is the highest recorded trade of all time for an athlete. Like,
It's a lot of money.
It was a lot of money. So when he gets injured, do you imagine the pressure on him? Forget the fact that he's injured, and that's a drag, and he can't even express himself and do his job.
What he enjoys doing.
Right, like that's gnarly for him, and the pressure on his family and the rehab, but also probably a preventable problem. That's really it. Is how much of these problems are preventable. Let's spin that down from our best case athlete. Because this is the conversations. I get to go everywhere, and I talk with every branch of the government. I get universities and colleges. Kids, we've seen an increase in ACL injury rates, right, in children. This is children. They're pretty bomb-proof. 400% under 12 in the last 10 years. So kids are tearing their ACLs at a freakish rate, jumping and landing.
That's crazy.
Why such an increase? Diet?
Because diet and sedentary lifestyle. We don't teach kids movement skills. PE is about exercise.
Discourage. I mean, they should be playing in the playground until they don't want to stop playing anymore. But they get 45 minutes a day maximum.
All right. And we shouldn't even mandate exercise. We should mandate play and movement skills. Yeah. That's what we should be mandating. You can't pass the second grade unless you can pick your backpack off the ground with your back flat. Guess what? Kids can figure that out. We can teach it. Yeah. You teach kids how to write, teach them to read, but we don't teach them to jump and land.
Yeah. They build parkour parks in Denmark now where there's just bars and walls and they can be creative, whereas at the moment we just have swing sets and it's like swing on the swing set, spin on a roundabout. And there's no mind in that. They're bored, they get bored, they're just following, and the kids will get on a swing and they'll try and lie on their belly and they'll do this creative movement. Instead of give them bars and walls and let them play around and create their own stories and their own things and functional movement instead of just sitting on a
make it about play.
Yeah, exactly.
And we don't have to formalize and take the love out of this.
For adults, for adults too?
For adults too. You should have a movement practice. You should be challenging your learning by learning new sports and new skills all the time. Erwan LaCour of MoveNat, great thinker about, hey, you should you say I didn't on a pull-up rack, you grew up on a tree. Well, that's actually what you're supposed to be doing. The problem is we don't set up that, institutionalize that, lower that barrier to entry. So some kids who mess around and some kids who've never messed around, right? They just don't have the opportunities to engage in this play. And, your body's wired. If you look at kids, so if you went and exercise, which I know you do you just go hard and go right off the bat, you just start going, or you probably warm up a little bit, right?
Yeah, especially at my age.
Well, warming up physiologically makes sense. You should be shifting blood from your stomach, right? The boxers have been saying forever, go into the ring cold, come out cold. You're gonna die, right? You need to shift for the cardiac output. We know that you should be hot and sweaty, your tissues are perfused, but you should have full range of motion automatically. So if you're listening to this, for example, my challenge to you is with your feet together, squat all the way down, bum to heel. Just hang out there. Can you do that? Can you squat all the way down? That's full range of motion in your hip, and it's full range of motion in your ankles. And if you can't do that, then this is the mechanism for your plantar fasciitis, your foot pain, one of the reasons you have knee pain, one of the reasons you're more likely to tear your ACL. And that's just because you don't have full range of motion, and your body's going to work it out because it's so clever. kids have full range of motion. What we need to do is just teach kids how to move, when we don't do that. So when you see little kids, kindergartners, tear off for the playground, do they warm up?
No.
No, full speed, right? And Pavel was talking about that. You should be able to walk over and pick up a couple 100 kilos cold because you have full range of motion, your tissues are healthy. Yeah. But what has happened is we've pulled ourselves so far away from normal that we have to warm up and reclaim. I mean, if I asked you to go on your hands right now, you could walk around on your hands, cold, because this is full range and you can do it and you don't have to warm up to put the cat litter up on the shelf. You know what I mean? That's ridiculous.
Is it true that your 8-year-old daughter deadlifts?
Yes.
Okay. Just checking.
But turns out she never deadlifts heavy. It turns out teaching her how to keep her spine flat and hip hinge is how why she can jump so high and why she has a good start on her swimming, because this is the language of extending the hip, right? Yeah. Jumping. Yeah. If you look at the wind up on a jump, shins are vertical, butt is way back, back is flat, internally rotated in the back. See where his hands went? Into a stable shoulder position automatically, because this is the only position to jump, which is if you just bring your hands forward, that's a deadlift. Okay. Picking something up off the ground. I mean, maybe we should use a different language. Let me teach you how to pick something up off the ground, right? Because my 5-year-old does that. 2-year-olds do that. So why aren't we formalizing the movement? And it's almost, physicians don't, imagine the frustration of physician. You go in with knee pain, they take a picture, and you have a hole in your kneecap. Right? This bone is designed to be, it's a bone. Have you ever eaten the marrow out of a bone? How hard is the bone? It's hard. You need a saw to get through the bone. So if you've worn a hole in the bone because your kneecap's crushed into your femur all the time, how many oscillations does that take? And your physician's like, hey, you should probably stop running. I see that you've worn a hole in the bone. That's designed to be forever. This is the only bone. You can't unring that. And you're like, you can't keep me down. You're the worst doctor. I run. This is how I express myself, And running, it turns out, is very technically driven. You run correctly because it's the only way you can run. Mm-hmm. Kids run correctly. If you run barefoot, you can only run one way correctly. If you put a shoe on, you can start heel striking, you can do disastrous things. No child heel strikes. It's an unnatural movement. And what ends up happening is that kids sit 6 or 7, 8 hours a day, start to shorten your hips, their backs get rounded, then they put them in these high heel shoes, and all of a sudden, right about first grade, kids start heel striking.
So you're teaching your daughters kind of the way they move throughout their whole life.
I wish I'd used a father growing up, man, because I wouldn't have these wide feet and things like that.
Well, we just didn't know. And that's the thing, is we didn't know, but now we know.
Now we know.
And so now we're having a conversation about it, and people they're like, show us a better way. And I don't really care what your movement practice is, yoga, dance, what's so fun is that the shoulder is the shoulder. We were saying earlier that in the last 10,000 years, you really haven't evolved much. You're the same guy, you have the same physiology. And I use this example in the book, but we were in Australia, and we were staying at this nice spa on a family vacation after teaching, and my wife was like, hey, you should jump into this yoga class. It'll be good for you and entertaining for them. I'm like, all right, I've done yoga for a while. I studied yoga.
You did study yoga?
Yeah, I did yoga.
Because you're a big, strong, tough guy. Yeah. Most people wouldn't put yoga with you, but you use this in your practice. I don't have
to do yoga because I lift weights and have a movement practice that looks like gymnastics and parkour, right? I take myself through all these positions. I have that fluency in language, and I know how to breathe, right? Yoga is largely also about accessing the diaphragm, which is about down regulation and getting yourself out of these stress states. Can you sit? My wife and I meditate, that's yoga, right? It's a meditative practice. So I go to this yoga class, and you're right, I look like I'm 101 kilos, I'm a big guy, and
thanks for converting to metric, by the way.
How many stones is that? That's 75 stones.
Just say bruv.
It's 14 stones, bruv. And
pretty good.
So I jump into this class, and the woman sees me in the back, and she's just like, fat American guy. Here we go. Can't put his arm, can't touch his face, can't wipe his own butt.
You're not fat.
Yeah, I'm not that fat. So you should see your abs, by the way. You should be able to see those things. We halfway, right into the class, she's like, whoa, what's going on in the back? Good job. She becomes very effusive, and she runs up afterwards. All the little skinny fat girls are turning around, and I'm like, suck it. I'm right back here kicking your ass. Yeah. And
yoga was competitive.
When
she should treat you differently. Yeah, she should treat you any differently.
She should have, but she did. But she was really a jerk, Yeah. And condescending, and everyone else was. And I was like, oh, we'll see who's best practice. Yeah. It's a personal practice. But she came up afterwards and was like, hey, I didn't realize you had a yoga practice, and I'm sorry, I misjudged you. And I was like, wow, it's really cool, but I don't do yoga.
I don't.
And she's like, well, I don't understand. And she's like, what do you do? And I was like, I lift heavy weights. Have a nice day. And it's because it's the same shoulder.
Do it right.
That's it. There is no. We know what the best practice is and what the best stable shoulder is, and it's understanding that if you don't understand the formality of it, because you're going to jump and land doing free running, and you're going to be in strange positions. And if you don't have full capacity of your joints, then when you get into an extended period, then you're way more compromised. Versus if you have full range, you end up in these extended vulnerable positions, and you can still be stable, and you can still buffer those positions.
The only problem I have is, I don't know if it's intuitively or what, is because humans are lazy. In seeking efficiency, we can become lazy.
That's right.
So in putting my socks on every morning, I lift my leg like this and put it on like this, but that gives me a bad range of motion in my hip. Now every day I try and put them on like this to keep, because I know that's the functional range of motion.
Well, it turns out it does not look like a yoga position or a pistol and a squat.
Exactly, completely. But because I'm lazy or efficient, at some point in my life, I thought, I'll just put my sock on like this. And so now I have my hips like square or they point outwards instead of being like this. So I've had to teach myself and get to this age to realize things like this. But how many people go through life and they'll never realize that they've done something lazily and it's put their body out of position and then...
Well, I would argue that you didn't, I don't know how many times you're putting your shoes on and off in a day, but it looks like thousands of times, right? But what happened is the rest of the movement and sitting and being a modern human forced you into some compromise. And you happen to pick it up in that position. Yeah. And you realize that doing it correctly was a way to ameliorate or attenuate some of those compromises. Yeah. And the problem is we haven't ever given people that option of the consciousness, right? You're not just a piece of meat. You don't just need to be on the treadmill and work harder. You need to understand how you're supposed to move. That takes some work. You know, Greg Glassman, the founder of CrossFit, he said, look, you know what the difference is about what we're doing? So we're teaching technique. You know, should be a technique-driven piece, not about how hard you can work anymore. Rafe Kelly up at Parkour Visions, and now we're doing free running. Are you kidding me? Like running through the environment and jumping over an obstacle. I mean, we've been doing that for a gazillion years, right? But now we're figured out, hey, this is a fantastic way to get your heart rate up and do all these things that human beings should do. It's artistry, it's expression, it's dance, right? It's like freestyle. Oh, yeah. But now we've figured out we can take these basic principles of how to crawl on the ground and do the bear crawl and basic jumping and landing, and we can actually formalize it and teach it to people, and they're better people, and they're more injury proof, and they have fun, and their backs don't hurt. And it makes them great athletes, and they can pick up new skills. And this is it. This is what we're playing for, is leading a better life. We work hard, and I recently have flipped it on my head. Like, I have realized that, I used to say, life is a bunch of dealing and gnarliness and hard work, and then like for 2 minutes I was stoked. But now I've realized it's the other way.
You can enjoy every minute.
And really having to bring the consciousness back into your eat, and it's little bits at a time. It doesn't have to be this daunting thing. Like, you just make a better decision at this meal, and I'm going to walk instead of going that, or I'm going to learn a new skill, or I'm going to go take this yoga class or this dance class, or go find out. And I mean, you can take a free running class. Yes, you can learn to do these things. Yes, and when you're going to be 110. What are you going to be like when you're 60? Because I plan on stealing your girlfriend.
I plan on cleaning and pressing.
That too. I just turned 40 on Saturday.
Congratulations, by the way.
Thank you.
Dude, welcome to the club. It's awesome up here.
It is awesome. And I'll tell you what's interesting is I don't think I could have had this awareness. You have some really consciousness that I did not have when I was 25. And maybe it's because you're a different person and you live in a different era now.
He's extremely exceptional.
Yeah.
Yes.
But now you shouldn't be the outlier. It should be what's typical for 25. But the problem is 40, I couldn't have had this longevity conversation or the maturity, because I fell into, I went faster and I lifted more weight, so I must be getting better, right? Yeah. Instead of, quality, and it's a slow grind to get better. I'm getting
fitter. I'm just getting better and better with all this stuff. I just observe how I respond to everything I learn, and this stuff is like the truth. Yeah, you can't just go harder. It's
the truth.
And
you're a human being. And we just haven't ever asked people to be human before,
right?
Because we didn't know, and now we know.
And this is kind of comes from your CrossFit days. And I wanted if you could explain what CrossFit is to someone in the UK that might not have heard about it. What you guys do. What would I find if I walked in off the street and was like, okay, I'm going to spend an hour with Kelly at a CrossFit gym? And also, I want you to address the kind of cultness that CrossFit has about it, where it's like these guys that do these things that I don't understand.
Well, I think what's fun, right now we're seeing CrossFit really explode in popularity because it's giving people a skill set a formal skill set about movement.
Okay. When did you start your CrossFit gym?
2004.
Okay.
Wow. So we've been doing
9 years ago. That's a long time.
And we're the 27th CrossFit. Now there's 7,000. So we were early adopters. I saw the truth of it, because what we do is if you walk in, it doesn't look like a gym. It looks like a gymnasium from the turn of the century. Rings, squat equipment, because it turns out, for example, front squatting and running is not a gimmick. It's not a gimmick. Learning how to run hard and jump is not a gimmick. That's fitness. Having basic body control in your environment, being able to do push-ups and burpees and roll and doing a single leg jump. This is the language of being a human. And we've just kind of codified that and said the tenets of gymnastics, the tenets of Olympic lifting, the basis of powerlifting, excellent running. This is what good movement and what a movement practice should look like. And it's what you'll notice the first time you come into a CrossFit gym is that people are working very hard, and you unfortunately you have to be under some load. And the average intensity, and remember, we can scale all of this. So here's a good example, because sometimes people they come in and they're like, I can't relate to this at all.
Too intense for them.
Too intense.
Right.
So Litvinov was a famous Russian hammer thrower who on like Mondays for his quad workouts would front squat 200 kilos. That's just like 440. It's a huge front squat for 7 reps, and he'd run 400 meters. And then he'd do 3 to 5 to 7 sets of that, which is a freakish amount of work. Like, it's so freakish that my personal 1 rep max squat is 440. Like front, I mean, that's it. That's my all-time best, and he's doing it for 7 for multiple sets and running hard, right? That's what kind of capacity people have. And I have a good squat. Like, I'm a big, strong guy, and yet if I take that to your mom or your grandma, you know what we'd do? We would get up off a chair, we would walk 5 meters, we'd turn around, we'd sit back in the chair.
Scalable, yeah.
And it's completely scalable. And so the idea is saying, hey, look, this is the thing that makes you human. Can you do it? And then now you've got the skill down. So now we're going to challenge that with load and volume and intensity and duration and speed. And so what you come in, you've seen people engage in a movement practice. Remember when the first time you took a steps aerobics class in like the 80s and you were like, whoa, these people know what's going on. You felt like it was a cult. Or the first time you dropped into a yoga class or a dance class. Yeah. Well, you start to learn the steps and you start to learn the language. So CrossFit is basically a codified version of saying you need to work at unsustainable intensities. It has to be heavier than what you can manage. You have to start to challenge your positions until your form breaks down. And that may be over 20 minutes, that, doing push-ups and basic jumps. But what we do is our idea is we use it as a laboratory to basically challenge your capacities to be human. Show me you can keep a stable shoulder overhead, and we're going to do that in a lot of different ways. Because that's the language of being human, right? And then it turns out, as a side effect, the person who has sort of the best fluency in this also probably is the fittest and looks good naked and doesn't get hurt and is really enjoyable, right? And so it ends up being a really
ancillary benefits to doing everything right.
Comma.
And you guys are all about the right technique, right? From what I've seen of CrossFit and everything, it's all about getting it right and not cheating the movement. And then from there, you think all these other things happen as far as the pain going away.
That's great.
The lift's going up.
I would say any good teacher. Here's the problem. I think that at some point we all stopped thinking we needed a movement teacher or coach.
Yeah.
You had a coach in middle school, soccer, and you had a coach in high school or even college, and then you stopped and you're like, I don't need a coach anymore. And what it turns out is you do need a coach, you need a teacher. And technique, I'd say everyone would agree on the technique, but now we've really connected the dots. And it's not just, hey, you need to run, but you need to learn how to run. Right? Great that you're running. You get full marks for being exercising, but you need to know that running is a very technical skill. Yeah. So let's put the technique, let's put the skill back in being human. That's what we're doing. And I think people find that, if you've ever been on a team together, you work hard, your training partners become really close friends. Well, that's just what happens in any gym where people are training and have common goals, and they eat sort of similarly, and it feels like a tight family.
Do you try to be conscious that when someone walks into your gym, they might be like, I'm just not ready for this, and to try to be like, no, all we're doing is this, ease them into it?
We the vibe of a place you pick up in 2 seconds.
Yeah. Any martial arts gym, you pick it up.
In 1 second, you're like, this place is for me, this place is not for me.
Yeah.
And you may have gotten it wrong, but you're actually correct all the time. Yeah. And if you walk into our gym, people are like, hey, what's up? And there's a stoked vibe. I don't listen to music when I exercise. Yeah. I think it's really distracting. It's totally distracting. Mm-hmm. But when we do have music on, it's like Hall & Oates. We're stoked. It's Kesha. And people are like, whoa, what's going on here? And it's upbeat, it's ballads, we feel good. You walk in. Yeah. For some people, we're a little bit different, and your listeners may be different, but people may not actually get any unconditional positive regard in a day. the interactions with their spouses is bad. They don't feel really valued at work. They're working really hard. And this may be the 1 hour of the day where someone's like, hey, you learned a new skill. You kicked butt. That was great. You had a training partner. And that's the only time. Church, maybe on the weekend, they get some unconditional positive regard, maybe from their friends on Tuesday nights. But that's it. This is why, there's such a pub culture here. It's been blowing my mind that, right after 4, boom, people are out there having a pint, pain to the cure. And what's happening is people are getting that unconditional positive regard with their friends, and and that's what happens inside the gym, and that it really does reinforce, because it is uncomfortable. It's hard work to learn a new skill. Yeah. We cheat ourselves because it's easier, and then we're unhappy, and we feel like crap. We don't know why.
What are the 3 movement patterns that would be like, if you could abolish them on the planet, that you see people doing that you could do? Or there must be like, not pet peeves, but things that you see where you're just like, we need to fix this, besides sitting.
Well,
sitting,
it's just difficult. It's really difficult to sit well. It's actually impossible to sit well. The yogis were sitting in lotus position because it turns out that position for the hip made your spine very stable. It was easy, and putting your hands in that upturned position actually organized the shoulders into lotus, which made your spine more stable, so you didn't have to think about sitting upright. So it wasn't, putting your fingers together was so you could feel your pulse, so that you could monitor your breathing, so that when you breathed in, your pulse went up. When it breathed out, it went down, which is heart rate variability. And people figure this out. So sitting poorly and bringing postural awareness would solve a lot of problems. If I could get people to stand or lean at work, that would be changed.
So what's standing properly? Because everyone lean on one hip or whatever, but it should be up, like hips in and shoulders back.
Neutral. If you squeeze your butt as hard as you could when you stood, and we've done so many videos on our site, Mobility WOD, and on the book. But it's basic yoga, Tadasana, feet straight, creating a little torque. Everyone, if you ask anyone, should you pick up that with a rounded back? People would be like, no. But I'm like, so it's okay for your shoulders to be in that position? Look at your shoulders. This is what we call the Delta Bravo shoulder position, which is short for douchebag, right? Douchey, what's up? Bro, you work out, bro. And, this position is the position that people adopt because it ends up being mechanically stable and I don't have to do any work.
My friend's done some work with me to help correct that, and it's all Turkish get-up stuff, which is all like this position. It strengthens something in your lower back, which pulls your shoulder.
It's not even about strengthening; it's about motor control, it's wiring.
Rewiring.
You understand what the stable shoulder position is. Of course, the Turkish.
But the day after I did that, I was just walking around, not thinking about it, but my shoulders were pulled back.
Because you had practiced, and your body understands. It's so clever. Your body is so sophisticated. It's like an iPad. You don't need to know how.
Probably way beyond an iPad. But
you don't need to know how the glass works or how the battery interfaces the software. You need to know how to turn it on and turn it off, and how to move the icons around. That's it. That's all you need to do. But your body's that sophisticated, and when you practice, really what's happening should be happening to gym. And we say movement practice, right? Oh, do you have a movement practice dance or something? But I'm saying, do you practice being a human? And it's great if you can practice all day long because you're walking barefoot and your feet are straight and you're thinking about, and that's what we're trying to do, is bring the consciousness back into being a human being, which sounds like the same thing that, people have been talking about forever.
Right.
We really feel
you're hitting a new audience that way though, because you're hitting people that wouldn't listen to the yogas, or they listen to someone in the gym who's fit. And so you're in there doing things, looking really well and strong. They want to listen to your story, whereas they don't want to listen to the guy sat cross-legged in the studio. So it's like you're going to hit a new.
Perhaps and I think we even haven't in the cross-legged studio we didn't connect the dots for people there either. And I don't think we connected the dots in the gym either. It's hard to relate to powerlifters or Olympic lifters to understand what's going on, especially if I'm just a guy. I don't want to, I'm 40. I just want to feel good, throw my kids around, and clean 400 pounds this year. But the point is, you don't have. I think honestly, people have no idea what their physical capacities are. Like, we have unlimited potential to be. You can do amazing things. You should be pain-free, and the pain-free thing happens very fast.
Yeah, it does. When I changed my diet, it happened.
That's right.
It's as simple as cleaning up my diet.
Being a little alkaline.
All the little joints and aches. I used to be able to, like, if you wake up in the morning just to squat, I'd feel it in my knee. Now I can wake up, everything's fine, just from that simple change.
Well, and you were putting those loads under your system that are freakish. Running. It can be upwards of 5 or 6 times body weight impulse. Impulse is change in direction. So we see impulse as the momentum down, back up, that change in momentum. And what's happening is, I'm 220 pounds times 6, do the math. Now, if I'm jumping and exploding and then landing and controlling all that, I better have tissues that can manage that.
Tons of weight,
it's tons. And you're doing it, over and over and over as you learn new skills. So we have to set a condition where it's background noise. Just drink more water. Eat right. Eat food. Quit being, sleep. You can't cheat the sleep wagon. You have to sleep. Then, do you know how to move? Because there are all these places where you can learn how to move now, and we don't care what it is. Then, do a little maintenance on yourself, and guess what? You live to be 110, you kick ass.
Okay, so you don't have 3 things per se, but sitting, posture is big.
And I'd say really take a hard look at developing a movement practice. You have to breathe hard. You have to be a little bit stronger. You have to train these positions. Whether you're in a yoga practice, whether you're in, you're a free runner, whether you're doing, whatever it is, you need to go learn how to be a human being.
But you have to do it. You have to do it yourself because you can't rely on just the teacher. That's the hardest thing. Because in yoga, the teacher's talking to 10 or 30 people, however many, and they're trying to direct you. But if you're just trying to hold a position, you have to think about the posture.
Well, and the good news is that there's tolerance in the system.
Yeah.
So you can make some errors for a long time.
Oh, yeah.
Right? While you learn the skill. You don't have to be perfect out the bat.
Yeah.
But then the confusion is that people were like, well, I've always done it this way and I didn't get hurt, right?
Yeah.
I did Bikram and I overextended, and then one day I woke up and I had 3 herniated discs in my back. Well, of course, because you didn't. So there's tolerance built in, but then eventually you have to figure it out. Drink more water.
Right. And sleep.
And then bring some consciousness and awareness to how you stand and move. Like that would change your life. More energy during the day, you feel great, back doesn't hurt. It's amazing.
Sleep is big. It's something I've been working on for the last year or two. But I know in America, everyone's always working. How hard do you work? I stayed up till 2 a.m. doing this project, and I think people are quick to skip on the sleep.
If you travel too, because there are a lot of people who listen to this generation and just genre podcasts who travel. Forced to travel. Right. You travel for your job.
A lot,
It's the sleep researchers at Stanford say, what we know, for example, and you can test this with a little cheap glucose meter from the corner store, but if you get 1 bad night's sleep, your fasting blood glucose, how much sugar is in your blood, will be elevated for the next 24 to 48 hours. So you actually look pre-diabetic. Less than 6 hours of sleep, you're pre-diabetic. No matter what, you're an elite athlete. You just slept, and you're 30% immune compromised, so it's totally cool. If you travel, it takes an entire day for every hour of time change.
Yeah, that's what I hear.
And you've seen that, and you can map this back in, and this is why you have to read, is that when they do the time changes, right, the traffic accidents skyrocket because the hour has messed so many people up that they're just a little bit groggy from 1 hour change, and the sloppiness increases. Imagine if you've taken a 3-hour ride, or this is my day 2 here.
You 8 hours different.
Yeah, and I'm messed up.
Right.
And
that's where earthing is. I hear earthing's really good for correcting you because you get back with the earth cycles. We're always on these mechanical, man-created cycles, but if you connect back with the earth, it will help.
What's earthing?
Correct you.
With the charge?
Earthing. I sleep with a grounding sheet, or just walking barefoot on grass for like half an hour, or exercise. Exercise re-corrects your body.
That's
quite
right.
well.
What are you reading right now?
I just read. What am I reading? I have a couple books about creative process going on right now that I just cracked. I just finished this great book called Lexicon. That's a novel about language, and it's pretty amazing. Okay. I probably have 5 or 6 reading projects going on at once.
Okay. Any consciousness books?
Yeah, I do have a couple things right now. I'm blanking off the top of my head.
Okay.
And science fiction? You always got one of those on the roll, or less lately?
I'm out. Like I'm just sort of out of the good sci-fi. I have a really deep, heavy-duty Japanese big put. It's called SQ3 or something like that. And but I'm looking. I just went through a huge John Scalzi. He wrote a serial. He wrote Old Man's War and stuff. Okay. So I'm always looking. Okay. Ender's Game, you guys know, is coming out.
Yeah.
Ender's Game was such an important book to me. I think about it all the time.
One of my co-hosts, he's a big fan. He gave me a copy of that. So.
Or since got card before he got crazy, but
Okay. Do you kind of hang out with some elite guys like in California and the U.S. scene? Tim Ferriss, Neil Strauss, that kind of thing. You guys have a club going on? Can you apply for this? Can you talk about this secret society? Or
I don't know even. I mean,
yeah, good answer.
I think everyone feels like they're on the outside. I'm definitely not in that club, but these guys are.
That's what you're supposed to say.
We don't talk about Fight Club. What's really fun is that there are so many good people working towards the same set of variables. Like Tim is shooting a TV show right now
Is he?
about how to. Is he nice?
Is he?
About
Jesus, I'm
about how to
American.
pick up a new skill about like accelerated learning. So he's going around and just did parkour, and he's going he's doing all these different things. And
So follow on from his book.
Yeah,
kind of meta learning.
but really great, and you know, and the Tim treatment, and so he got it right, but he's been at our gym training for a while, and it's just fun. It's fun to be around in these communities, and you start asking, and you know, I think we are in the age of collaboration because the silos are coming down, and it's so exciting because you figured out so many things that I need to know.
Yeah. But it shows even in like, I saw a comedy on TV and it was British mixed with American. Andy Samberg was in a British comedy. And it was funnier than anything I've seen in a while because the collaboration hasn't been done. People always want to do the Brit or something that's been done before.
Internet, modern technology, it's changed.
But religion would work the same way. Religion would be the last thing to ever collaborate. But if they did, that's spirituality right there, you know, taking little bits from everyone.
Does it feel like we're in that kind of weird age of collaboration? You know, maybe it's the whole podcast, share information, curate really cool people. But it seems like you work really well with all these innovators of ideas, whether it comes to Tim or all these other people. I mean, it seems like, you know, 30 years ago you saw these camps, you know, whether it's luta libre versus jiu-jitsu or this versus that, or even authors, and it was all about the fight. But that seems to be like old news these days.
Well, I think what people realize is that it only took you so far. You know, I think modern MMA is a really interesting idea. This, like, Forrest Griffin is a buddy of ours, right?
Right. He's a big fan of your book, right?
Big piece of work, you know, he's a friend.
and
and
Forrest Griffin is an MMA fighter from the UFC. He was
world
the
champion.
light heavyweight champion at one point. He has retired. He's quite a character. He's written a couple books too,
Yeah, he's
right?
brilliant.
Okay. What's he like to hang out with?
He's hilarious. He's the smartest guy in the room, but
He'll never want you to know it.
That's
is that
right.
it?
That's
Really?
right. And the most terrifying human being I've ever met. Like if he decided to kill you, he'd just eat you. You know, but you would never know.
It wouldn't feel bad about it.
And you'd be happy about it because he's such a good guy. But the modern MMA guy has to be so, like, they'll train 3 or 4 times a day in different disciplines, and the learning and the collaboration. I think it's an interesting idea that people have really said, hey, I have to go learn this to be effective. I have to think differently about what it is I'm doing or have these other set of skills. And, you know, that's what people should be doing. We should be constantly diversifying. When did you last time did you learn a new skill? Like, honestly, because that learning process, that deep practice unlocks a lot of things in your brain. And, you know, when you pick up a new job, remember that you get a new job and you scramble for a couple of weeks and it's like the world's a little bit brighter and more interesting. Well, I think the same thing happens when you suddenly get interested in a new topic about biology, personal biology, or you know, hacking your human system. And we need to do more learning and constantly be in that
Seek
environment.
new experiences.
Yeah, absolutely. And the experience of being
that's
alive.
built into us. Yeah, exactly.
Do you train MMA guys, or have you worked with any of those guys with their emotions? I mean,
not with their nest emotions. You know, but I've worked with a lot of fighters, and you know, my co-writer Glenn Cordoza he's co-written basically like everyone's book, and he's a significant fighter. So I have spent a lot of time talking about fighting, and done a little jits, and I used to do some judo, but I always seem to get my ass kicked. Okay. So, you know, I try to shy away from things that. No, I'm just kidding.
Maybe too nice.
That's why jiu-jitsu guys are so cool, because they've all had their ass kicked repeatedly.
Yeah, there's no ego left anymore. In fact, if you look at the Gracies, what do they talk about? Love.
Yeah, they do, right? Yeah,
all
nutrition.
The time. Yeah, like this nutrition, love, like it's a practice. It's sort of a complete way of thinking. It's pretty amazing.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'll go about one more on jiu-jitsu, but yeah, it's like if you meet guys that have stayed with jiu-jitsu, that means they've kept doing something where they've been humbled repeatedly, and they still wanted to go back and get better. And then it becomes about the journey, not necessarily about the belt. And then that's how you get the belt, is by not being focused on the belt. You know, it's
pretty amazing. And you know, I personally believe that you know, people should be engaged in a little fighting. Like, my daughters will start doing some jiu-jitsu because it teaches all these ground skills. It teaches human interaction that's non-sexual, that's non-combative. Because if you get mad at me, I don't even have a schema to deal with that.
Yeah.
You know,
aren't the humans the only animal that has no natural defense mechanism?
Well, I think we have a lot of defense mechanisms, but I think we don't train them. And I think that if you ever engaged in any kind of sparring, wrestling sport, like, when people affront you, you feel very differently, and you have to have a different emotional reaction.
Yeah.
And it's actually just being human. Like, we should teach kids to wrestle.
Yeah, my 9-year-old, she's doing jiu-jitsu for a year now. So.
See?
Yeah, it's great. And when, like, she's not doing that, then she, like, you know, dresses up and can be the girl with the makeup. And then when just the match, she's rolling around with boys and trying to choke them out. And like you said,
getting choked out.
And getting choked out. And it's a great interaction, and it's normal for her. It's like, okay, we're rolling on the ground, then we can go out and talk.
It should be normal.
It's a nice little
And
mix.
empowerment. And, you know, I have 2 daughters, as I've said, and, you know, boy, they are going to sneak up on the world and mess people up.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Guys are not even going to know what's happening.
And little ninjas.
What are you going to be doing in say 10 years? I mean, like, you obviously have a lot on your mind. You're doing a lot of stuff. What do you want to be?
I think where we are now, it's interesting that I turned 40, you know, I don't have 10,000 hours, I have 20,000 hours. So what we're seeing is we're having collaboration experiences where we can teach more teachers to do this. You know, I'm only one guy, I can only affect so many people, so I need to be able to have way more people be able to see this. And so the mission really becomes about, you know, consciousness change. Like, I really feel like we can cure and solve a lot of human dysfunction and misery on the planet. The number one problem in Africa right now is musculoskeletal back pain. Like, that's the biggest strain. You know, I mean, like, we've gotten there, you know, like and I think a lot of this is easy. So in 10 years, I hope to be continuing. I mean, I live a blessed life. Like, I say this, and my wife always laughs at me, but I'm like, imagine the greatest life you can imagine for yourself. Got that? Now imagine a little bigger. That's my life right now. And that means that I need to be very clear and work really hard about saying, what are the problems that I think I can help solve
in the world? Yeah,
in the world. Like, why don't we reform kids' school? Like, Jamie Oliver is a total hero of mine.
Yeah.
Like,
of mine too,
the first thing he did, like,
School diet, you mean?
Yeah. Took that notoriety, went in and was like, hey, I think we can change how you cook and think. Like, his school program.
Applied it and got away with it.
Holy crap. Yeah. And just a stud. Like, put your cojones on the table.
Talk and everything.
I know. He's such a stud. There are a few people that I want to meet. I want to meet that guy because he's such a badass. And I think that's what's interesting. And also, you know, I need to, you know, there's times in your life where you work like a dog. And now is the time for me. Like, I bought a new guitar, you know, I've been taking guitar lessons again. Like, there's just, you know, you got to, if I'm going to have anything interesting to say, and maybe I've already said it, maybe there's other things we can do, but, you know, the next phase is giving people, like, if I'm the only person in the world who can think and see this, then I've you know, shit the bed.
And what do you think is the medium that's going to allow you to get that message out there? Because like you said, you're only one guy, and you can only go to Arsenal, you can only go down, you know, to Surrey and talk to, you know, so many people. But like, how do you get that message out there?
Synchronicities, consciousness, that's the medium. People that are
Through
ready
our
for it, people are
minds?
ready for it now. Well, essentially, like, the world will lead people to, like the world's led me to you today, and I'm super inspired by it.
But, you know, there's a camera, I don't know if our people can see it, but there's a camera here, and that's from 60 Minutes.
Right.
And you know, we're showing what's happening in the military, we're showing what's happening in schools, we're showing this sort of, and what's happening is I think people are realizing that the story of personal, you know, health and longevity is a global story, and suffering is a global problem. And, you know, what we can do is maybe take a crack at that and really show, you know, wouldn't it be great if I didn't have anything else to say? I could just go back to exercising and teaching people.
Yeah.
I mean, you know, eventually I just want to be at home and teach squatting to beginners again. Like,
you feel that responsibility, you know, at this stage.
I think it's not a responsibility, but like a privilege. I don't mean
you're right.
It's incredible. It's incredible.
Right.
You're right. That's right.
Now, you've written a book. I mean, that's a great way to get your message out. I mean, being on shows like this, 60 Minutes, I mean, is ultimately kind of video and web the best way to spread your message?
Well, someone said recently that, you know, it used to be like 3 exposures, and now it's like 14 exposures.
Until someone gets the message.
Yeah, and I think what's great is that, you know, you can be cross-platform. You know, the book is really important because it really allowed people to hold something in their hands and talk about it.
Still important to have a book.
It's important to have a book, and an iBook's not the same. You know, iBook is a reference, and so, you know, that plus teaching, and then, you know, also living what you preach. You know, it's fun. I think being an example is important, and you know. You need to be up to mischief. You have to be, what did Andy Warhol say? You have to be willing to get excited about nothing. And I'm excited about, you know, talking about you being barefoot. I mean, you know, let's go. You know, so we're just living in such a unique time. If you could dream your whole life about being in the right place at the right time, we're here. And I'm so lucky that I figured a few things out and had the right friends and training partners and experiences to maybe, you know, curate some of that information for people.
You know, I'm going to finish up with a question we ask everyone who sits in that chair. Very London Real question. I asked you that question. Yeah. If you could make a phone call to the 20-year-old Kelly and give that young man a bit of advice, what would you tell him?
Oh, boy.
What was he like?
You know, he was me without skills.
Okay.
Like, you know what I mean? Like, I've always been enthusiastic and fired up, and you know, and like, this is it. I kind of would describe myself as, you know, stoked. But you know, you don't be patient with your process, and that the most important thing is the process. And I remember I turned 18 and had this existential crisis, like, I haven't done anything yet, waiting, you know, I'm ready for my life to begin, you know, and then you just like, well, the problem is you don't have a practice, you know, you just need to practice. It doesn't have to be, you know, mystical engines and angels, and, you know, what you need to do is go train, have great friends, and it will happen, you know, be aware of the world, read widely, like, be patient, and it's so easy, you know, so I think that's what I'd say.
Okay. All right. On that same note, what's the best advice you've ever received?
Sleep.
Yeah?
Yeah.
Have you been doing that? Has that been a big priority for a while, or was there a point in your life where you weren't getting enough?
I think there's definitely times where I wasn't getting enough, and conscious of it. You know, I think if people honestly just slept more, they'd be shocked at how much better they felt and how a lot of these simple problems went away. You know, sleeping is free. And it's one of the things that, like, you can spend a full third of your life in the most luxurious bed in a dark room, and, like, you know, you put out all your testosterone growth hormone in that first cycle of sleep, and that's the most important part. People don't realize that, like, you literally are eroding yourself from the inside. And I know people are like, I don't need to sleep. I'm like, liar. When we cut you in half and count the rings, they're going to be skinny rings, you know? We want those fat, you know, not drought years, but, you know, flood year rings and your tree rings. And sleeping is just such an easy way. Like, I mean, honestly, you'd have better sex, you'd look better naked, you'd be better at work, you'd be stoked. Turn the TV off.
It's such a big slap in the face from you. It's like, fucking sleep, like, constantly as well. Like, if you're not doing it right, I think it's.
And then probably drink some water, and then probably stop eating gluten and then sugar.
Okay, that's a good top point. Last bit of that one is what do you say to that 20-year-old kid that's listening to us right now on this podcast, who maybe wants to open his own CrossFit gym or write his own book someday, or, you know, grow up and be like Kelly? What advice do you give him?
You have no idea what you're capable of, and we're living in a time where it's all possible. It does feel like hard work. You know, I think that's the mistake, is that, you know, everyone that I'm around that I really respect, they bust their ass really hard. Like, if you think you're going to be good at it, go do it. You know, if you're going to write a book, are you writing now? You know, I write on the blog a lot. You know, I teach a lot of people to squat. Like I said, I didn't have any skills. And then all of a sudden I just started teaching and teaching. If you think you want to be a coach, go start coaching and coach 10,000 people, and then tell me what you've learned. You know, I mean, like I said, the Japanese figured this out a long time ago. You know, you want to be.
I watched The Last Samurai last night.
Oh, Jesus!
For the first time.
If you want to learn how to paint bamboos, spend 10 years painting bamboo, become a bamboo, then forget about bamboo when you paint. You know, this is probably the last thing I'll say, is that when I was in university, there was my resident hall advisor, the guy who tried to keep us in line, right, had a sign on his door, and it was like Emerson. It was like, let your goal be to lead a simple life. And I was like, fuck that. Like, that's a bullshit. I don't want a simple life. Bring on the... And now I understand exactly what he meant. Like, it really should be much more simple. You should practice, let your life just, practice. Go out and do something and practice a lot and be great. There's no substitution for just repetition.
Okay, and do it. If you're thinking about it or talking about it, just do it.
Because now it's easy. I mean, be inspired,
Right. All right, how do people get a hold of you? You're on Twitter. You're pretty active, right?
Pretty active.
What's your Twitter handle?
We're at Mobility WOD, WOD, as in workout of the day.
Okay. Yeah. Which is a CrossFit term.
Well,
right?
it is, and originally the website was Mobility Project, and because I was saying, hey, I think we can take a lot of this low-hanging fruit off, but WOD is the consciousness that you need to do some practice every day. Take care of your body every day. Do some maintenance. So mobilitywod.com, and our stuff is up there on the site. If you just Google Kelly Starrett, I have the world record for internet stretching videos. Bam.
Really?
I just said that.
That just happened.
Let them try.
No.
And getting your book, Amazon best, or?
Amazon, Barnes & Noble, it's everywhere.
Okay, that's Supple Leopard. Will we see another book in the future?
I have two more. I'm working on right now.
Okay. I always know that, when I have someone in this chair, the guys that are on point, they're already working on their next one or the next one.
You could have called that before you asked him.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah. Anyways,
are you still talking about that Supple Leopard book? Because I wrote that 3 years ago.
Is it old news? Wow, I don't know what to say. Timothy, did I miss anything?
No. This was amazing for me. I'm excited.
Yeah, it was a
I don't know
perfect.
what, I'm just excited for life.
You're just pumped up right now. We
Yeah,
just saw
yeah.
Last Samurai too, so
Yeah.
that's the way forward. Thanks so much for being here. It was
pleasure.
awesome, enlightening, and in the age of collaboration, we allowed 60 minutes in our studio. You know, it's all good.
I know, right?
You know, I'm just proud of myself. So that's awesome. If you're listening to us on iTunes, you can see the extremely handsome Kelly and Timothy on our YouTube channel, London Real. We're on Twitter, we're on Facebook. Come join the party. Send me an email if you want to help out with the show. It's all good. As we say on London Real, it's about the journey. I think you guys are all about that. And Kelly, all the best. Please come see us next time you're back in the UK.
Done. Book it.
All right, man. Have a good time here. This week on London Real, Max Kaiser is back to talk crowdfunding and George Galloway's run for mayor of London.
Raise a million, X number of thousands of people want this. They want me as mayor. This is the target. And either it's yes or no. It's a binary outcome. It's a serious attempt, again, to disrupt this political process, which everyone agrees is completely corrupted by big business, big corporations. There's the mayor's office, and then there's the mayor's public relations office. And it's a parade all day long of big business, you know, coming through that office, looking to do deals. Boris Johnson's over in China in a helicopter and saying Chinese people come to London. You know, well, what about all the jobs that ended up going to China?
London Real presents Max Kaiser, crowdfunding.
Let's see what the people want, not what the people are going to be sold through the corruption of the BBC.